exciting. And a special thank you to Dr. Stacy Robinson and Jenny Kalina, since they also kind of had the idea for this, which is kind of super exciting. So this is different than a traditional kind of Zoom meeting. This is a Zoom webinar, which means that it's just one directional. So you guys see me, but you can put your question in the chat. So if you have a question, or you can, I would say, let's do it. What's better? Should we do the Q&A or do the chat? I would say just use the chat. My challenge is I won't necessarily see everyone's question, but I will do my best to kind of scroll back through it as well. And if anyone needs to talk, we can allow people to talk too. So I know most people, when they join meetings like this, they kind of want to be camera off and maybe in the background and watching, which is totally how I do most webinars. So I completely understand. So we'll give people another minute or so. This is also recording. So just so everyone knows, if you do volunteer any information or chat on here, it is being recorded because it'll be sent out to attendees so that they can go back and watch this. I think Zoom keeps it for 2 weeks, so you'll have to click on the link to watch it within the next 2 weeks, and then I think Zoom wipes it. But we can figure out if it's downloadable or not. So, all right, let me pause and check my chat window and my question window. And I don't see anything. Can everyone see the chat box on your side? I'm going to say, can others see this chat box? If not, it's okay. To this chat window. This is my first time using an actual Zoom webinar on this side of things, so we're still like working out some of the kinks. Oh, and I do see a Q&A. Oh, it says chat is disabled. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. How do I turn? Let me work on finding that, and then we will get started. So, I'm sure this is. Oh, here we go. We can do all questions. I see the Q&A. The question is going to be, how do we make the chat enabled? This might be something we figure out for the second when we do this situation or with the webinar. All right. And thank you, Stacy. I got that too. So, okay. Let me, Stacy and Jenny, what I can do is promote both of you. If you have anything you want to say before we get started, we can do that as well. And there we go. So if Dr. Robinson or Jenny, if you have anything you want to jump in about, I think I've just promoted you now, so you should be able to chime in. So, all right. All right, and I see you there, Jenny. I'll if it popped in for you or not.
I'm here. I've just muted myself.
Okay.
You're the star.
All right, and you guys should see a screen on your side. Do you see my slides on your side? Oh, hold on. Let me go back to sharing it. I think it pulled it away. Let me share, and I want you to share this screen right here. All right, excellent, perfect. And you guys should all see a picture of trees and a very calming kind of picture from that perspective. So 5 proven steps to kind of sleep better tonight. Again, my name is Dr. Dana Baughn. We are going to have a fun kind of conversation tonight about sleep and specifically what we can do to start improving your sleep, even starting tonight. So these are all fun, kind of exciting pieces on that. And let me, hold on, I see one alert. Oh, I see another one. Okay, there we go. All right, excellent. Switch it over here. All right. So first thing I wanted to do, just I think everyone already knows this, and I think I had you click on this when you registered for the webinar too. which is that this is just an educational event. It's for helpful information, so it's not therapy, it's not medical advice, it's not psychological advice. This is just a fun time to kind of learn a little bit more about sleep. I do always encourage anyone who is attending something like this, if you have specific questions about your specific situation, always reach out to your healthcare provider, since healthcare is a very personal thing. So you definitely want to make sure that you're working with someone that understands your situation. And as with sleep, there's always lots of things that that are very relevant to the individual. So, all right. I think we got that there. Other thing, I also just ask for everybody, if you enjoy tonight's presentation, if you can just write a review for me, I would super appreciate it. This is probably the most common way that I get Google reviews, is I just kind of do some chats like these or presentations, webinars, and just ask people to say, if you enjoyed it, hey, write me a 5-star review on Google about what you learned from tonight, since the goal is for this to be helpful for everybody. All right. And then a little bit about me. So again, my name is Dr. Dana Baughn. I am a health psychologist by background and training, which is a clinical psychologist, but specifically I focus a little bit more on how your physical health and your mental health kind of interact. And the way those things interact can impact lots of things. So sleep is what we're going to talk about tonight, but I also work with clients on weight-related challenges, so whether that is weight loss or body image around that, or healthy habit change, to living with chronic pain or fatigue, to having sleep problems, specifically kind of insomnia, or sometimes CPAP non-adherence or challenges with CPAP, if that's a big challenge too. But really, it's kind of, that's where we start. But often what I tell a lot of my clients is we start with the health-related pieces, and then there's usually always some deeper stuff, as we'll kind of dive into it with sleep tonight as well. And so the goal is to always kind of start there, but kind of go a little bit deeper as well. Um, Other important things about me. So I am licensed here in Florida, also in New York. And then with PsyPact, which is a specific thing for psychologists, I can work with people in 43 different states, which are all the light blue or the blue ones here. The gray ones and the black ones have not passed legislation yet, but that's almost all the country. So and now we're going to jump into sleep stuff, which I think is probably one of the most exciting things that I kind of like to talk about with clients. And for those of you who have met me or talked with me about sleep, this stuff is exciting for me because I got into this in graduate school and even a little bit before then. So I personally am someone who does struggle with bouts of insomnia. I don't know if my eyes show it right now, but there are times, and graduate school did not help this, but there are times where my sleep gets out of sync, and it can get a lot worse. And so really this is where this kind of started for me. And then it kind of became a continued interest after graduate school. Worked with a lot of clients in the sleep clinic and my grad program, and then also continued on through different kind of healthcare systems that have been in, primarily with VA healthcare systems, but both in San Francisco and in Tampa and in Orlando. And so what we do know about sleep is there is a formula for getting better sleep. And there's lots of things that can impact your overall sleep. But there are 3 key things that we definitely want to make sure that we get in the right spot to make sure that you get better sleep. The first one here is making sure that you have a strong sleep drive, and I'll kind of go into what that means in a moment. The next thing, and we do have control over our sleep drive, or our sleep pressure is another word for it. The second thing is making sure your circadian rhythms are in the correct placement. And that's something that we have a little bit less control over because those are kind of more fixed biological kind of processes. And the third thing, which we have a lot of control over, is what we call arousal. Now, this is arousal from the psychological kind of perspective of how we define that word, which sounds a little different. Really, what that just means, and what I like to call it, is energy. It's when your brain or your mind has energy. So what we want to make sure is happening, and actually I'm already noticing a typo on my slides here. This should say low arousal, by the way, is in order to get good sleep, we want to make sure you have strong sleep drive. We want to make sure that your circadian rhythms are in the right spot. And then we want to make sure that you have low arousal, which is, again, getting that mind to kind of go into that calmer kind of state, or that calmer kind of place, if that kind of makes sense. And the way that we can do that is definitely how we respond to different parts of sleep, and specifically how we respond to sleep difficulties. All right, so let's kind of keep going. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to add them into the chat box or the Q&A portion as well. So, All right. So now I want to show you, before we can dive into um, the five key things that you need for better sleep tonight, we got to do a little bit of a quick sleep 101. And by no means will we go over everything tonight, but I do want you to kind of understand a couple key relevant things about sleep. And I want to correct a couple misperceptions that I feel like I see a lot of when I'm working with clients, specifically with insomnia. So, what you have in front of you is a hypnogram, which is really just a graphical representation of a healthy young adult's sleep. And you read the hypnogram from top to bottom and then left to right. So, top to bottom is you have your stages of awake. This is where the orange arrows are on the side over here. And then it goes from awake to then N1 or stage one sleep right here. Um, and then, oh, sorry, I clicked. I didn't mean to click there. Go from N1 to N2 to N3. And then you also can see that, so there's a few things that I want you to see here. So you go through stages N1, N2, N3, and then REM. And what's really kind of interesting about stages one, two, three, and REM is the primary way that we differentiate what your brain and what your body is really doing in these stages is really by looking at brainwave activity. And the reason why that's important is because I can tell you that your Apple Watch and your Aura Ring, as much as these provide some really interesting data, these devices don't actually know the exact stage that your sleep is in. And that's primarily because the best way to get this is to actually look at brainwave activity. And right now, these devices, which I'm a huge fan of, these devices are using algorithms to impute where your sleep stage is at based on, body temperature, heart rate, body movement, various things like that. So it's using that and an algorithm to get its best guess at where your sleep stage is. But the most important thing I think to know about this is that your wearable devices do not give you the most accurate picture of where your sleep is at. In fact, the most recent study I saw in the Aura Ring actually had the most accurate algorithm when they compare a wearable device to an actigraph, which is where they kind of put the electrodes on you and you sleep with them. For those of you who've done an in-lab sleep study, they would know your brainwave activity when you're in the in-lab, not when you do the home sleep studies. Um, but even that, the Aura Ring was, I believe, around like 73, 74% kind of accurate in terms of where it was at. So what this really kind of means is that take your wearable data with kind of a grain of salt, if that makes sense. The next thing I want you to see here, and I circled it, although I feel like the circles here got a little moved over, but do you see these kind of tall blips here on at what is this, roughly about three and maybe a third of an hour over here, and then maybe about 5 3/4 hour over here, and then roughly towards the end of the 6 hour and 7 hour. What these kind of blips up here are actual awakenings in the night. And so you might ask me, you'd be like, whoa, 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 wait a minute, Daniel. Like, why would a healthy young adult have one, two, three, four, five awakenings in the night? And that's a great question. And the reason for that is because healthy sleepers wake up in the middle of the night. In fact, you likely wake up in the middle of the night. The real interesting thing about insomnia is that it's not difficulty waking up in the middle of the night or having woken up. It is not being able to go back to sleep, which is why at its core, insomnia is an anxiety kind of related kind of set of symptoms. Which is also why, to get back to the wearables, there's a newer term that's starting to come on. It's called orthosomnia, which is really when your Apple Watch or your bed machine or your Aura Ring gives you anxiety about your sleep. That's a whole other separate piece. But for some of us, too much data is actually kind of making the worries a little bit worse. But regardless, what I want you to see on this hypnogram here is that healthy young adult sleepers have multiple wake ups in the middle of the night, and that's not a problem. The real difficulty is waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to go back to sleep. Now, the other key thing that I want you to see here, so we saw the stage one, two, three in REM, and REM is the dark area, and REM is technically not sleep, although it's kind of easier to kind of anecdotally think of it as sleep, but from a biological perspective, your body is not sleeping during this time. So what's kind of also interesting, and I want you to see on this same one here, but I circled it in a different color. These ones should be green circles on your screen here, is that there's two kind of key things that happen throughout your sleep as you go through the night. Number one is actually three. I'm gonna tell you three. Again, it's hard to do this kind of sleep 101 crash course, but it's super relevant. You go through multiple stages of N1, 2, 3, and REM every night. And in fact, what we do know is the more that we can get your brain to go through these stages of N1, 2, 3, and REM, N1, 2, 3, and REM, N1, 2, 3, and REM, the better sleep you get overall. Now, what that means is sometimes your wearable might tell you that, oh, you only had like 2 hours in REM or 1 hour in deep sleep, or it calls it these other things. And the honest reality is it's because, again, the wearable doesn't necessarily know what your sleep is. But what's really important is that really, when most people say they want more time sleeping, what you actually really want is more time so your brain can consolidate it and go through these stages of N1, 2, and 3 and REM more cycles. So really what you want is more consolidated sleep with more cycles of N1, 2, 3, and REM than more time in bed or even more time spent attempting to sleep. And we'll talk about later about why those are not the ideal things. The key thing to recognize here on this picture and what I've circled in green here is that what we also know is your body more heavily spends time in stage three sleep at the beginning of the night, and then you spend more time in REM towards the end of the night, which is really the beginning of your day or the morning. What we also know is that you're far more vulnerable to waking up during REM than in other stages. So stage three sleep is that deep, really restorative sleep. Now, we don't entirely know why our brains do these things. And to be fair and full disclosure, the brain is still kind of a mystery. I mean, we do not know everything there is to know about how the brain works and even what is actually happening in REM and these different stages of sleep. We do know what happens when people get deprived of these things. And since we've done a couple studies on what happens when we kind of deprive people of REM sleep. And we know that your long-term memory consolidation and your functioning go down drastically when this is kind of deprived on individuals. So we know what happens when we can keep it from happening, but we still don't know everything that's happening. But what we do know is that deep, really restorative sleep that most people say, oh, I feel so much better. That has happened when you have more stage three sleep. And then we know that more stage three sleep happens toward the beginning of the night, and less stage three sleep happens towards the end of the night. And we know that more REM sleep happens towards the end of the night and less REM in the beginning. But again, if you remember what I said a few moments ago, we want more cycles of N1, 2, 3, and REM. That is the goal. And so why this is relevant is just kind of three key points. Number one, you have multiple cycles of N1, 2, 3, and REM every night. Number two, and I think you saw this on the hypnogram, but I forgot to point it out. Any disruption to the sleep cycle means that your body goes back to N1. So if you are in stage three sleep and something wakes you up, like the cat jumps on the bed, or you hear, the garbage truck outside your house, or something else kind of happens, um, then you'll wake up. And that wake up again is not the challenge. It's being unable to go back to sleep is the big challenge. And again, your body wants to go back to that where the stages that it left off as quickly as it can. And then the third part, waking up in the night is a part of your regular sleep cycle. So that's completely a normal thing. The next thing so you got those kind of three key parts there. The next thing I want to talk about, and this shows up a lot with my clients who've had long-term sleep difficulties. And what I really mean by this is clients of mine who have had sleep difficulties, I would say for at least 5 or plus years or so. These are usually my really chronic insomnia kinds of clients. And there's usually always insomnia plus something else. It's usually not just insomnia, and that's okay. But what's really important about this is I have plenty of clients that come in and are like, oh my gosh, there's nothing I can do. There's no way we can get anything better for my sleep. I can't, I'm a bad sleeper. I'm a poor sleeper. I've been sleeping this way since I was like in my 20s. And what I can tell you is there are definitely a few certain medical etiologies that can make sleep more difficult. But generally speaking, there's also a lot of things that we can tweak and improve and get you better sleep too. So that's why I like to kind of focus a little bit of time too on this mindset of, and this is a concept kind of Carol Dweck really kind of focused on, but really the idea of it is what can you do? So let's look at some examples. So a fixed mindset usually views something as it is an immutable trait, meaning there's no way to make it change or to make it happen. A growth mindset is much more along the lines of I'm learning to get better each day. And a growth mindset is absolutely what I try to encourage almost every one of my sleep clients to kind of take when it comes to your sleep. Because I can tell you, improving your sleep does not happen overnight. It does not happen after 1 week. In fact, generally speaking, you won't notice the improvement in your sleep until roughly about 3 to 4 weeks after you're making the right behavior changes consistently. So, what I really tell clients about that is when we're doing a sleep diary, is that a sleep diary is kind of like a leading indicator. It tells me where your sleep is at right now, like last night, this week. And your perception of your sleep is more of a lagging indicator because, believe it or not, how you think about your rest from last night is primarily influenced not just by last night. That's a portion of it, but it's also last night plus the cumulative sleep that you've had before then, which is why you can actually function fairly differently based on different nights worth of rest. And so this is why that growth mindset is a key thing. In fact, I have a few examples here. Number four, a fixed mindset. I give up when things get too hard. A growth mindset is more of, challenges help me to grow. And specifically, I want you to kind of see this with number six here when we're talking about sleep, is, a fixed mindset would say, I'm just a bad sleeper, and there's nothing that I can do to change that. Versus the growth mindset would say, I can develop better sleep habits and I can improve my rest over time, which is absolutely what the research data kind of shows us on CBT for insomnia, which is kind of where a lot of these kind of concepts come from, is that you can 100% improve your sleep. Now, it may not get back to where your sleep was in your 20s or maybe even, earlier in life, because as we age, there are more things that interfere with good quality restorative sleep. But in general, if we're doing these right things and you're giving yourself time, you should be noticing an improvement in your sleep quality. So again, mindset, a very important one here. Last couple ones here, I have it with chronic pain and then also with relationships or family friendships, those types of things, just because, for all of us, we always have more than one challenge happening in our life. Our sleep is one of them, but so are a bunch of other things. But again, another piece of why, the mindset is super kind of relevant. Another quick reminder about the review. I'm going to skip over that one real quick. So, want to jump in directly to what you can start to do starting tonight. In fact, what we're going to kind of go over these kind of five key ideas, and these are backed by a significant amount of the research on what works for CBTI. In fact, the most effective component of CBTI when we look at dismantling studies, which is really just a fancy word to say we created an intervention and then we broke it down into multiple pieces and then tested those multiple pieces with different groups of people to see what happened. The five pieces you're about to get are literally the most effective parts of CBT for insomnia. It's not the only part. There are some more pieces, but this is where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck if you wanted to think about where to start. The first one here is going to bed only when you're sleepy, not just when you're fatigued or tired. I'm gonna let that one sit in a little bit because I know almost everyone probably has a thought about this. In fact, when I'm working with clients in person, and my apology, I'm realizing on this webinar view, I don't really necessarily see anybody, so it's a little harder to interact with you guys. But um, I would say, and when I'm working with clients, either over video or face to face, this is usually the gasp moment of like, wait, what? I only go to bed when I'm sleepy and not fatigued or tired. And this is because for most of us, we are misunderstanding what sleepiness is. In fact, for a lot of clients who deal with insomnia, being bored, being fatigued, being exhausted, being tired, none of those things are actual sleepiness. Sleepiness is when you are on the verge of dozing off and you are struggling to stay awake. And a great example of this is I have plenty of clients that say to me, well, I mean, doc, why I was like sitting in my recliner and, it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And like, I was just like passing out. So I just passed out. I would say if you are watching TV and you are sitting on a stool in your living room, not a comfortable stool, just a stool, and you are wide awake, you are not sleepy. And this is a key kind of difference because if you are in a comfortable chair or one of those reclining chairs, right, or in bed, and you are just dozing off, you are more than likely tired, but you are not necessarily sleepy. Sleepy is when your battery is fully drained. You are all the way gone. It's like when your iPhone is about to like, it's in the red and it's you gotta like plug it in really quick or else it's just gonna stop responding entirely. When you are ready to go to sleep, your battery needs to be fully depleted, almost at 0%. I mean, not 0%, but like one to five is a good analogy on that. So again, number one, go to bed only when sleepy, not just fatigued or tired. So this means you don't go to bed when you're bored. You don't go to bed just because it's 7:30 at night and you feel like you're done with the day. You don't go to bed because you want to turn off the day, turn off the world, or forget about maybe some stressful things that have happened to you early in the day. None of those are good reasons to go to bed. In fact, a lot of times, many of us actually, what we really need are transition zone activities. So things to take us from periods of time when our brain's been really, really active, like maybe work or a really complicated situation we've been dealing with. And we need buffer zone activities or transition zone activities to take us from that to then getting ready for rest. So, but I'll dive into that a little bit later. All right. So number one, go to bed only when sleepy, not just fatigued or tired. Number two, if you are unable to sleep, I want you to get out of bed and return to bed only when you are sleepy. Now, this is another one where I have a lot of times clients are like, oh my gosh, like what? Like, what this really means is if you are awake in bed and you can tell that you're not able to enter back into sleep, and if you needed a time on this, I would say 10, maybe 15 minutes. But really, the key thing is if you feel like you aren't about to go back to sleep, or this one's really, really important, you feel like you start to get frustrated, then I want you to be able to get up and get out of bed, leave your bed, leave your bedroom, as long as it's safe for you to do. If getting out of bed in the middle of the night is not safe for you, maybe from a mobility perspective or something else, then definitely again talk to your individual healthcare provider about specific strategies because you're different, because we don't want anyone falling in the middle of the night or experiencing, something else to make this situation more complicated. But if it's just, you can't sleep, I want you to get out of bed and your bedroom, and I want you to leave. I want you to go to your living room, go to your kitchen, go to your dining room, go somewhere else. Keep the lighting low. I mean, definitely kind of try and dim the lights and keep lighting low. But I want you to start doing plenty of what I call tired but not sleepy activities. And I've got a whole list of these types of activities. In fact, I'll talk about this podcast that I do with my good friend and colleague Michelle Zatuni about this like running list of like tired but not sleepy things. But there's so many different things you can do. You can do thing, and the key thing on this, and this is why it's individual to each person, the activities you want to be doing in the middle of the night are things that are not activating. So if you think about your brain like an engine, we want to keep the engine low. In fact, as low as possible. I don't want you to do anything that turns your engine on or turns the brain on. So good examples of this is maybe you wash some dishes, or maybe you fold some of that laundry, or maybe you organize a junk drawer, or maybe you pick out your clothes for the next day, or maybe you read a book that's not exciting. So this one's key. I just had a conversation earlier today with a client, and we were talking about, oh my gosh, this book is so like engaging, and you can't like put it down, and you want to like turn the next page. That's not the book to read in the middle of the night. In fact, a book to read in the middle of the night might be a book you've already read before, one that you know what happens when you turn the next page, or one that you know what happens with the story. Um, Magazines can be another one. My big thing on magazines, pick an easy magazine that has lots of pictures. Do not read a really complicated magazine, definitely not any political magazines. You want things that are kind of dull, if that makes sense. Um, Other good examples can be uh, jigsaw puzzles. Also, a game of solitaire, like old-fashioned solitaire, like not on an iPad, but like an old deck of cards. The other key thing is you want to try your hardest in the middle of the night when you are tired but not sleepy to not look at your phone or tablet or laptop or screen like a television screen. And this is primarily because of both the light as well as your brain associating your phone with, oh, how many alerts did I have? What did I miss? Um, in fact, this one's a interesting kind of tip. I do not want you to know what time it is from the moment you put your phone down and charge it and knowing that your alarm is set. I do not want you to know what time it is until you wake up, until that alarm goes off the next morning. In fact, it is incredibly helpful for your brain for you to be unaware of the time. When you are aware of the time, you actually condition yourself to wake up, and we can dive into that. That's a whole other webinar on what happens with your sleep. But so again, number two here, super, super relevant. If you're unable to sleep, get out of bed. Only go back to bed when you are sleeping. Okay. Number three, use your bed and your bedroom just for sleep and for sex. This one is really, really important, and it has everything to do with classical conditioning, which is a really kind of core psychological kind of principle of things. But essentially, your brain learns to associate things, two things together, whether you are consciously aware of it or not. And the reason for this is because your brain is constantly taking in information. Even though right now you might be watching this Zoom with me, you could be, listening to sounds like in other parts of your home, or you could be paying attention to something else, or you could be noticing like, what your shirt might feel like, on your arm there. All this information keeps coming in your brain, even though you might be watching, me on this video right here. And what's really important about that is the same thing happens too. Your brain does unconscious learning, or what we call conditioned learning, without you consciously being aware of it. And this is why it's really important to learn to associate your bed and your bedroom with just sleep. So this is usually what I call my no list for a lot of clients. And so what I mean by this is no reading in bed, no scrolling the internet or social media on your phone in bed. This one's a really big one. No shopping on Amazon on your bed. I mean, you know what? I love Amazon too. I mean, I think Prime Days deals or whatever are happening right now. At least I get a ton of emails about it. Um, yeah, love that. Don't do it in bed, and don't do it when you're trying to wind down for the day. No television watching in bed, no checking your Apple Watch in bed, no resting in bed. By resting, what I mean by that is you're done with the day, and maybe you're done with even all your chores, and so you just climb into your bed and it's like 9 o'clock at night, but you're not sleepy, but you're just going to sit in your bed and rest. That is definitely not going to help you from a behavioral conditioning perspective. I know beds feel lovely, and most people want their bedrooms to feel like, a restful oasis. And I'm all about that. I mean, your bedroom should definitely feel like a restful oasis, but I only want you to sleep in the restful oasis. I don't want you to relax in it. I don't want you to read in it. Don't want you to do these other things there. Um, Also, no checking the time on your phone in bed. No checking the clock in bed. This is a big one. And I mentioned this earlier. If you have a clock in your room tonight, the one of the number one things, the best things you can do for yourself, turn that clock away from you tonight when you go to bed, or put a towel over it so that you can't see what time it is. If you bring your phone into your bedroom with you, you can bring it in there, but I want you to charge it on the other side of the room, the side of the room where you have to physically get out of bed and go over to do anything to your phone. Also, make sure your phone is silenced, since you don't need breaking news alerts in the middle of the night. I mean, if you have, specific family members you need to be aware of or something like that, I understand that. But generally speaking, I don't want you to get alerts or be woken up by stuff. And like breaking news from like wherever is not a reason to get woken up in the middle of the night. Um, and then a key thing here, set your alarm and then do not know what time it is for the rest of the night until your alarm wakes you up the next morning. And that means if you wake up before your alarm, if you feel like you can go back to sleep, try it. If you can't, if you feel like it's been maybe 10, 15 minutes, or you start to feel frustrated about your sleep, get up, get out of bed, go do some tired but not sleepy activities until you can go back to bed, and then wait for that alarm to go off. Now, if you wake up and you feel like you're just awake and alert and ready to start your day, and it's before your alarm's gone off, you can go ahead and start your day. Sometimes clients are like, well, whoa, 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 wait, what do you mean by this? What if I wake up at 2 a.m. and I'm wide awake and like I know I've got a big presentation that day? That's when I would say try your hardest to do the tired but not sleepy activities. But if they don't work, go ahead and get up. Start that day. That one day will be rough, but I guarantee you your sleep pressure, oh, which I'm remembering I didn't explain what that is. Your sleep pressure will be incredibly full by the end of that day that you woke up far earlier. And so that's why I would say there's really kind of two ways to handle that. But generally speaking, I like to err on the side of give yourself the opportunity to try to go back to sleep. But the moment you feel tension or frustration about sleep, then I want you to get up, do those tired but not sleepy activities. All right, sleep pressure. I totally forgot about this. Okay. So I want you to think of your sleep as a balloon. And when you wake up in the morning, your sleep pressure should be really, really low, like zero. And the way that your sleep pressure gets that low is by you engaging in rest. And so ideally, when you've had good rest, your balloon should be completely deflated. And then as you go throughout your day, you're blowing more and more air into your balloon so that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, so that by the end of your day, your balloon is nice and full and you just kind of release the valve and the air naturally kind of takes over and you enter into that rest. That's what we call by sleep pressure. Now, there's certain things that can add pressure to your balloon. One is getting up and getting out of bed within 10 minutes every at the same time every morning. Second one is engaging in activity, like whether it's, conversations with friends, exercise is a big one. Things that can take air out of your balloon are things like taking naps during the day, or even resting in a chair and dozing off at like 7:30 at night or 9:30 at night and then waking up again. I know a lot of times I have clients that tell me, well, if I can fall asleep in my reclining chair, doesn't that mean that I'm sleepy? The answer is no, it does not. Now, you might have been tired and exhausted and lots of other things. But if you could have sat on a stool and taken a nap, then I would believe that you are actually sleepy. But if you could not do that, then I definitely want you to wait until you are actually feeling sleepy, which for most of us, when I kind of work with clients, we don't set a going to bed time because I don't really like to think of it like that. We set a not to go to bed before time, meaning I want you to stay up until this time. And then if it's this time, you can go to bed if you're sleepy, but if you're not sleepy, I want you to stay awake until you do feel sleepy. So, and then this number three here, using the bed and bedroom only for sleep and sex is all about conditioning and making sure that you have the right sleep environment there. Okay. Number four, wake up at the same time every day, regardless of how much you slept, and I need you to get out of bed within 10 to 15 minutes. This is the single most important thing you can do to help improve your rest right now. And that is if you are someone that is having difficulties with rest or sleep, getting restorative kind of sleep, anchor your wake up time to the same time every day, regardless of whether it's a weekday or weekend. Now, if you're a healthy sleeper, do you need to do this? No, but that's because you've got better sleep. But if you're somebody who's really struggling with your sleep, getting up at the same time and not just getting up, getting out of bed and starting your day at the same time every day is super, super, super important. In fact, oftentimes when I work with new clients, they tell me, or they always tell me like, oh, I have this bedtime at this time. I am actually really not at all concerned with your bedtime. I am far more concerned about when you wake up and get out of bed and start your day. And in fact, that is the single most important thing you can do to help get better rest starting tomorrow morning, which is just set yourself on a schedule. I'm going to get up at the same time every day, get out of bed. Doesn't matter if it's a weekday, weekend. Some really helpful things that you can do to help make sure that this happens are schedule activities that require, commitments to other people or to something so that it gets you out of bed. Maybe you meet a friend for coffee. I have one client that like they schedule their coffee maker and so they hear, but their coffee maker grinds the beans. And so the grinding, it kind of serves as a little bit of a, okay, I'm gonna get out of bed and go get my coffee, which I totally support from that perspective. Um, you can also attend, an early morning kind of group exercise class. You can call up a friend to catch up. You can take a walk. In fact, back to the calling up a friend, there is some real research that suggests that, talking with somebody is a very cognitively intense activity. So, talking to someone will wake you up rather quickly. So whether it's, phoning a friend or checking in on a family member, whatever you need to do those things so that you can get up and get out of bed at the same time almost every day of the week. So I know that one can be there can be a lot there with that one. I would say this is one of the ones that is a little more challenging for some of my clients. Okay, number 5, do not nap. The reason why I don't want you to nap has everything to do with that sleep pressure balloon. We want your balloon as big and full as possible by the end of your day. Or if we use a battery analogy, I want your battery so low, it's like in the red and like, the 5% or less. In order to do that, we got to make sure that daytime napping does not happen. Now, if you do have to nap, I'm a huge fan of power naps. And what I mean by that is setting a timer and keeping your nap to less than 30 minutes. Now, you might ask, why 30 minutes? And the real reason for this is because it has everything to do with your sleep stages. So we do know that when you're in N1 and N2, you're more easily awoken. And remember how I said N3 is a little bit harder? For those of you who've ever taken a nap before and you wake up and you feel super groggy, or you feel super like, whoa, like I took a nap, but I kind of feel a little bit worse than before when I took my nap, it's likely because your brain hit stage 3 sleep. So when you do a 30-minute or less nap, you're really reducing the likelihood that your brain is going to enter that stage 3 rest. And, I would say there's some people that really swear by caffeine power naps. That's another one where essentially you drink a cup of coffee, take a 20-minute nap, and then when you wake up after that, the nap clears your adenosine receptors, and then the caffeine starts to hit your system. Some people really swear by it. I would say if it works for you, great. And if it doesn't, that's okay. But I would say, again, the key thing here is try your hardest to not nap. If you have to nap, keep it to no more than a little, well, actually keep it to less than 30 minutes. Less than 30 is always a good rule of thumb. Um, the other thing is do not nap in your bed. If you're going to nap somewhere else or going to nap, make sure you nap somewhere that's not where you take a sleep or you go to sleep at night. So, okay. All right. So those 5 key things. Let me do a quick recap just because they are super, super important. So number 1, sorry about that. Number 1, go to bed only when you're sleepy, not just fatigued or tired. Number 2, if you are unable to sleep, I want you to get out of bed and return to bed only when you're sleepy. That's when I want you to do those tired but not sleepy activities that I talked about earlier in the middle of the night. Again, think things that are not too activating, things that are kind of boring for your mind. Number 3 here, use your bedroom and your bed in your bedroom just for sleep and sex. This has everything to do with behavioral conditioning. So essentially, this means don't look at the clock in bed. Don't do lots of other things in bed. Essentially, everything that's on the list there. And number 4, wake up at the same time, regardless of how much sleep that you got, and get out of bed within 10 to 15 minutes. This one's super, super important. In fact, the most important of all 5 of these. And then number 5, do not nap. But if you did have to take a nap, try your hardest to do a power nap. So keep it less than 30 minutes. And the reason why this is super relevant is all of these things require you to change and to grow. And I'm honest with a lot of my clients when it comes to sleep. The way that we know when sleep habits change is that you actually do feel worse before you feel better. And the reason for this is because that discomfort that you feel when you start to make changes to your sleep habits, there is something better on the other side of that discomfort, but you do have to push through it. And so that's why it's super important that I said earlier, how you won't notice the improvement in your sleep until roughly about 3 to 4 weeks after you're consistently making the new habit changes. That's because it takes a while for your perception of your sleep to improve. If I gave you a sleep diary and you showed me that you're consistently at 85% sleep efficiency, for the past week, I would say, great job. Your sleep is much better on your sleep diary, but you would report to me that you don't feel any different. You don't feel any better. And that's because that perception of your improvement lags roughly by about the 3 to 4 week kind of mark. So this is why, hold on, the better stuff is there for you. We just got to kind of get to the other side of that. And so because of that, I want to kind of, give everybody kind of a moment here to kind of think about. I know we talked about a lot here today, and I want you to think about what is one small step that you can take today to help improve your rest or your sleep. Could be any of the 5 that we talked about, or it could have been something random that you heard me say. I know one of them that a lot of my clients walk away from is, oh my gosh, I'm going to put a towel over my alarm clock tonight. I never thought I would do that. Doesn't matter what it is, but what is one small step that you can take today, tonight really, that's going to help improve your rest. Because what we know about sleep is a 24-hour a day challenge. What you do at night, what you do in the middle of the night, what you do in the morning, what you do during your day, what you do in your afternoon, what you do in your evening, all of those things impact the quality of the sleep that you get. Because remember, your sleep is about getting more of those N1, 2, 3, and REM cycles in. It's not about more time in bed. It's about more blocks of time that your brain can run through those cycles without being interrupted. And being awake for extended periods of time in the middle of the night or not being able to fall asleep in the beginning of the night, which I saw a lot of you filled out on the questionnaire, both of those are delaying your brain's ability to get that rest that you really want from a better sleep kind of perspective. All right. Last here, I always like to give people resources. I tell a lot of clients whenever I do complimentary phone calls with them, is that when it comes to making improvements to your sleep, there's tons of good self-help materials out there that you can use right now. In fact, there's workbooks out here. My two favorite are right here, the Insomnia Workbook by Stephanie Silberman. It is roughly about 25 bucks on Amazon. And then there's Quiet Your Mind to Get Back to Sleep by Colleen Carney and Rachel Mamber. That one's about like $14 on Amazon. Both of these workbooks are phenomenal. I recommend them to almost everybody if you want to try something that's low cost to help get your sleep in a better spot. What I can tell you is almost everyone reads these workbooks and then they say, well, but what about me? What about my situation? What about my specific piece? And this is when would say, this is when it's important for you to work with a healthcare provider to individualize your specific care because for a lot of my sleep clients, it's not just the sleep, it's sleep plus something else. It's usually anxiety. It's usually my mind just naturally is solving so many problems throughout the day that it's hard for me to find ways to turn it off. So, what I like to work with clients on like that is I'd like to, technically the word is called anxiety, but culturally and socially, I think we misunderstand that word. There's a difference in how that word is used in the psychological literature and then how most people understand anxiety. Um, a lot of my clients don't have what you would think of as anxiety, but they do have a brain that just always is on. And that always on, what we need to do with that, and I just call that energy. It's like your brain has got energy, and we need to redirect that energy into things that help your body naturally calm down so that you can enter into that rest rather than telling your brain to stop doing what it's doing, because that doesn't work, by the way. Or number two, trying to rely on something else to calm you down. I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with that have been on sleep supplements, sleep teas, gosh, you name it, practically everything from alcohol to marijuana to everything to you name it. Like people, I think, have tried everything. If you look at what's available for sale on Amazon in the sleep kind of product arena, oh, it's a lot. And most of it will not help you get better sleep because the problem is not drowsiness. We have plenty of things that can make you drowsy. That's not the issue. The issue is what happens when I wake up and I can't go back to sleep. And that's really insomnia. And that's what these workbooks and that's what CBTI can help you with too. So these are two workbooks that I highly recommend. Again, self-help, great options for you. Two more when it comes to mindset, the growth mindset. We kind of talked a little bit about this, and specifically one that's a very practical tool is the growth mindset workbook. So if you're someone that just might naturally identify as someone who might be a little bit more towards the negative way of kind of thinking about maybe your life, your health, your sleep, your anything, both of these books can be really helpful, but the workbook can give you some really helpful tools from that perspective. So. Okay, I know I've talked a whole bunch. Oh, third thing, sorry, I totally forgot about this. Also, I have a podcast. I do this with my good friend and colleague Michelle Zatuni. She's a sleep medicine physician, and this is free, by the way. So you can subscribe right now or go find it on YouTube. And in fact, we are going all through the sessions of CBTI on the podcast because again, what's really important to note about CBTI, it's not what's the intervention is not about knowledge. It's not about me giving you this information about how your sleep works. It's about applying it to your specific life story and situation. that's where most people hit the challenge. And that's what CBT for insomnia is really about. But you can listen along. I think episode 96, we start here with what to know before you get started with CBTI, and also an app that I like to recommend for people if you want to keep track of your sleep on the CBTI Coach app. It is an app by the Department of Veterans Affairs. It's probably one of the better ones out there. It also won't try to sell you things or sell you coaching services or sell you a bunch of other things. There's lots of that too. Not on the CBTI Coach app, but it's just a pretty straightforward one. But Sleep Takeout, helpful. You can listen to it on Buzzsprout or anywhere that you get your podcasts. So gosh, Apple Podcasts, Google, YouTube, all those places. You can also follow it on YouTube. We started experimenting with video this year. I can't say that we're the best at video podcasting, but we try. But this is also another helpful resource too that you can even just kind of follow along and just learn a little bit as you go. And then the last one here, again, if you enjoyed tonight, if this is helpful for you, feel free to jot down some notes, do a quick little review on Google for me. I would really appreciate it. Now I want to do is open up questions for you guys. And hold on, I'm going to move Stacy up here real quick. And there we go. All right, now, there we go. I think Stacy, I've promoted you to a co-host, I believe. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, there we go.
Okay. I just want to start by thanking you so much for doing this. You were very generous with your time, and I learned so much. And now I know why I have trouble sleeping because I'm not following, probably the things I should do. But I was really most surprised to hear about not going to sleep until you're really tired. And I always thought you need to go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time. But it sounds like it's waking up at the same time every day is more important than the other part. So that was a big take home for me. Sleep is so important. As a physician, I can say it's one of the top four pillars of health. And if we aren't sleeping, every chronic disease is linked to poor sleep. So we're always trying to work on this with our patients, but it's hard for us, I think, not being specialists in this area. So having you as a resource is I really appreciate. And you have helped so many of our patients. And I highly recommend you to anybody listening, and Dr. Zatuni, of course, and your podcast. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. This stuff is fun, so I enjoy talking about it. So it's a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much. So, does anyone have any questions? If you want to put those in the chat box or in the Q&A. Sorry, the Q&A I think is open, not the chat box. But if anyone has any questions, you can type them in there and I'll do my best to answer them. Or you can always email me directly if you have a question, and I'm happy to follow up with you that way.
I have a question. Can you comment on the importance of getting light in the morning, getting outside, having light hit your eyes, and the circadian rhythm? This is something I've heard,
Mhm.
but I don't know how much evidence there is behind that. Like, is that true, and is it effective in your experience?
Yes, great question. And yes, it is true, and yes, it is effective. So we know light in general influences your body's kind of wake cycle and the circadian rhythm kind of piece on that. We do know that natural sunlight is a little bit more effective than artificial light, but I mean, any light is better than none. And the key things are to make sure that you want light in the morning when you're trying to start your day, and you want less light towards the end of your day. And so what I mean by that is I'm a huge fan of these smart light bulbs that you can kind of program and do all sorts of things like simulated sunrises and sunsets and all these things. I don't do all the fancy things with them, but I will say using light as a natural wake up alarm clock can actually be really helpful, especially if you're someone, because we're about to go into a time change at the very end of this month and in the beginning of November. If you're someone that's really kind of susceptible to when the daylight starts becoming less, making sure that you can wake up at your regular time, but using some artificial light can be really powerful from that perspective. So, yes, light is really, really important. You want more of it when you need to be awake, less of it when you need to be not as awake, if that makes sense.
Yes. And what about the blocker glasses and the screen devices? Like, are those really effective? Or do you think we just need to be off of our devices in the evening?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's two things that are relevant, and when we talk about devices. Number one is the light, but then number two is how activating or alerting is this device, right? Like if you're wearing, blue blocker glasses and you're playing like video games, I wouldn't say that that's, the most kind of restful or getting ready for sleep kind of activity. And so what I would say is in general, do these light blocker, glasses work? The data's mixed. Some people, they seem to have a powerful effect on others. It seems to have nothing. I would say the real challenge with a lot of the blue light devices, blue light blocker devices, is that it depends on what it is that you're blocking the light from. If you're blocking it from your TV, that's maybe like, 10 feet away from you on the wall, that's a very different experience than if you're blocking it from your phone, which is like, right here or right in front of your face or an iPad or something like that. So I would say, generally speaking, I encourage clients to try, those light devices, but really, if the device you're using is activating to you, and a key thing here, we talked about this briefly with behavioral conditioning. If you're used to interacting with your phone throughout the day and getting lots of alerts and texting people, and if you're someone who gets like phantom, buzzing, and you think you got a message but didn't get one, I can already tell you that that device is too activating for you. You have too many learned associations between
Mm,
using that phone or whatever it is during the day for your brain to not constantly be wondering, "Ooh, did I get a new alert? Is there something new that I can take a look at?"
right.
So,
Yeah. What about sleep trackers? We all have them, right? I mean, they're built into these the sleep aid cooling
yep.
mattress, all these devices. Are there certain parameters we're really like that are most important? Like I have patients ask me, "Oh, I'm not getting enough deep sleep or I'm not getting enough REM sleep. How can I get more of that?" Of course I try to find the answer, but are there certain parameters that we should shoot for or do you think this is just like too much data that's going to worry us?
I would say this is usually on the end of what we call that orthosomnia kind of end of things, which is really the anxiety about, not it's orthosomnia is insomnia caused by the wearable devices or the too much data. And what I would tell you is that these sleep trackers, I think, can give helpful adjunctive information, but I wouldn't be worried about my Apple Watch or my sleep aid or my whatever telling me I didn't get enough REM sleep. Because number one, the only way to know that you're getting REM is to look at brainwave activity. Um,
Hmm.
what I would encourage you to do more of is set that consistent wake up time every day and keep it and start your anchor your morning wake up that way. That'll do far more for you than tracking your sleep with a device like that. Now, the exception to that is the sleep aid, and another common one is like bed jet too. Um, is if you're too hot or if there's something else that's making your sleep environment uncomfortable, then we definitely want to take care of that too. So I mean, I definitely have some clients that love their bed jet, love their sleep aid, love these things. And if you're someone that sleeps that's hot and you need it to cool, that's great. Just make sure it's not like turning off to where you're heating up in the middle of the night. Um,
Hmm.
you really want it to be cool until maybe about like 2 to 3 hours before wake up. So you want to make sure that you want to make sure those temperature changes aren't also going to contribute to you waking
Mm.
up early.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well,
Great.
I just
Yeah.
thank you. If there are no questions, I know it's almost 8 o'clock, and I want to respect everybody's time too, as well as yours, because you were generous enough to give us your hour. So thank you so much again.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I see one last question here. It says, how long before going to bed should you stop eating? So this is a good one. And I would say it likely depends on what you're eating and how much you're eating. The same is true for fluid kind of intake. I would say, generally speaking, you don't want to eat a major meal before bed, or you don't want to consume a good amount of liquid before bed. But if you're someone who is hungry, maybe find a healthy snack, something that, is not too calorically dense and not gonna wake you up and make you need to use a restroom in the middle of the night. I would say you should probably definitely make sure you don't go to bed hungry, but you definitely don't want to eat a large meal before bedtime. So. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you again, Stacy and Jenny, so much for having me. This was super fun. I'm looking forward to doing this again. We'll find more topics to talk about. These are fun. I always enjoy these types of things. So,
Thank you so much, Dr. Baughn. Have a good
Thank
all right.
you.
evening.
That was great.
All right, everybody. And you
All
should get
right.
automatically a video recording of this. I think Zoom will send it out, but I'll follow up with everybody too. So, all right.
Sounds good. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.